most important hormones for the reproductive health of women sits in the pituitary gland, which is here. And it sits right next to the hypothalamus. So the hypothalamus is our boss, our main communicator of the brain, is the one that depicts whether we have stress or not. It's sending us into parasympathetic or sympathetic state of mind. So what is infertility really? There is like this very clear definition that is basically the inability to become pregnant after 1 year of unprotected and regular sexual intercourse. And after the age of 35, the number of 12 months would usually drop to about 6 months. In reality, in Singapore and Asian countries in general, we can see that it's actually even below 6 months. Couples would maybe try for 2 months, and then they would very soon start to already start doing testings and going to a gynecologist to make appointments. Primary infertility is when a couple has tried for more than a year to conceive their first child. And the second infertility is the one when a couple has already one or more biological children and is experiencing challenges when they are trying to conceive for additional children. The female factors can be primarily in the reproductive organs, of course. We are looking at from top down fallopian tubes that could be blocked. Sometimes my clients, I just have one client right now that I'm seeing, she wasn't aware that her fallopian tube was blocked. And when we look at the explanations to that, it could be like an early childhood infection that had happened. It could have been a sports injury. It could have been anything that happened to a fallopian tube. Usually we are not born with blocked fallopian tubes. This is very, very rarely the case. But of course, genetically, it can be an explanation as well, but it's very rarely. So usually we would look into a previous infection that was completely unknown to us because fallopian tubes would not show any symptoms or sign on the rest of our body. The uterus septum, of course, the shape of the uterus, how it's shaped, whether it is like shaped in a way that it encourages implantation for the embryo, or whether there is a split uterus. We have seen everything. In these 12 years, I have seen women with 2 uterus. I have seen women with a split uterus attached to just one fallopian tube. I have seen women with a uterus that was not attached to fallopian tubes. I have seen everything. And it's pretty amazing what surgery can help to do. So some of the doctors can help with restoring some of these missing attachments, but it's not an easy surgery because, as you know, especially in the fallopian tubes, it depends very much also on the lots of these millions and millions of little hairs that are responsible to transport the embryo from the ovary all the way into the uterus, and whether those are actually still available and intact or not. We also had women who didn't have these little hairs that were actually moving with the liquid, and it resulted into a pregnancy that was within the fallopian tube. And ectopic pregnancy shows symptoms in the rest of the body. Funny enough, it shows it actually on the shoulder blades, because of the meridians that are attached. That's what I learned, but maybe you know even more about it. And so we were lucky enough to actually rescue the life of one of my clients who experienced an ectopic pregnancy. And because of this incredible shoulder pain, she went to see the doctor, and she was then treated early enough for this pregnancy. So polyps, fibroids is another big topic, of course. Very often we see clients with these factors as well. All of them can be easily removed with laser surgery. Endometriosis, most of us know it on the endometrium, on the uterus lining. but very often we can also see it affecting fallopian tubes as well as ovaries. And then we have polycystic ovary, of course, the PCOS that we know. It's another factor that can play. Of course, genetics can play a role. Autoimmune disorders nowadays even more prominent than before. We had clients with early menopause at the age of 30, 32. Very common in Asia to have women with a very irregular menses. And all what we can find out is we contributed to stress levels and nutrition so far. So there has been a bit of research coming from China and Australasia showing that very often it's linked to nutrition and stress levels. But a great way and great potential to do more research, of course. This is just another way on how to show how stress actually can impact. And all we know is like most of the most important hormones for the reproductive health of women sits in the pituitary gland, which is here. And it sits right next to the hypothalamus. So the hypothalamus is our boss, our main communicator of the brain, is the one that depicts whether we have stress or not. It's sending us into parasympathetic or sympathetic state of mind. And of course, if we are in that stress level, in the emergency room state of mind, then this hypothalamus would correspond and communicate with the pituitary gland, which then would actually just have an impact onto estrogen, progesterone, oxytocins, just everything. And you know how this then can throw even like a beautiful birth process that is on the way upside down all of a sudden. You know this much better than I do. And this is exactly the same what we are experiencing during conception, during fertility journey. So male infertility factors are really jotted down into like the 3 areas of the count. So how many sperms does a man have in one ejaculation? Then how is the motility of these sperms? Is it a normal progression? Are they fast swimmers or are these your couch potatoes? And then the third aspect that is usually done in a sperm analysis is the shape of it. So the morphology that is being looked under a microscope, and then the head as well as the midpiece as well as the tail are being like looked at and then being detected whether or not these are A, B, or C sperms. For a natural conception, like natural in that sense, if everything is fine with a couple, we would look into like 60% as a minimum for A and B sperms, which would pass the test on all 3 criteria here. Others factors can be genetics as well. There can be unknown infections as well as previous sports injuries that were done into the testes, and varicocele, which is like the enlargement of the ducts that don't transport the sperms into the ejaculation, how it should be done. So many men don't actually know, and they are super surprised that they can have an ejaculation, but with 0 sperms in there. So they are super surprised when they go in for sperm analysis, and all of a sudden they get these test results. So as you can imagine, it can take a huge toll onto manhood, on self-confidence, and all the mental and emotional well-being factors if a man finds out that the sperm analysis is not so great.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Fertility Counselor podcast. Remember, you are not alone on this journey. If you need support or have any questions, reach out to us via email at inquiries@counselingconnects.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media @Fertility Connects. We'd love to hear from you. If you want to learn more about us and the services we offer, head to www.fertilityconnects.com. And if you're looking for support beyond fertility, visit www.counselingconnects.com. Take care, and we'll see you in the next episode.